Okay, unless you have been living under a rock, or maybe this is just not your side of the internet, then you know that the rapper mogul 50 Cent has released in partnership with Netflix a documentary on Sean P. Diddy Combs. If you've been, subscribed or follow me for a while, you know that last year when, that Cassie video came out, I wrote about my thoughts and feelings about the bad boy brand and the mogul that was Sean Combs and everything that represented for me as a um, black millennial growing up under this guise of, bad boy pretty much running hip hop. And so I have been anticipating this documentary. TMZ put out something, but this documentary is different, right? TMZ put out a documentary that was specific to the sex trafficking or sexual assault victims of Sean Combs. This one does something a little different. By now, right, the trial has happened. He's been acquitted of some charges, charged of something else. He is in prison, serving his time, doing his thing. And people are bracing for that, right? Um, I think when all this happened and the seriousness of the charges, people, he was facing a life sentence, and people thought that's kind of the direction that this thing would go. And that didn't happen. But, I want to talk about branding because that's what I do. And so I watched this 4-part Netflix documentary. It's called Sean Combs: The Reckoning. It is currently #1 on Netflix. So that happens sometimes. It's currently #1 on Netflix. So obviously, people are watching it, and people are online talking about it. So here I am online talking about it. I want to start off by just talking about the nature of documentaries. You probably watch documentaries, maybe a lot of documentaries, right? About serial killers, about murderers, about um, moms stalking and texting their daughters and friends, right? You've seen Netflix documentaries, or you've seen documentaries before. But the nature of documentaries really is not to right, documentaries can be investigative, but it doesn't mean that, it doesn't take the place of, like a detective or a court hearing, right? Documentaries, are created by journalists, people who want to storytell, right? Documentaries are a collection of stories. So when you're watching a documentary, you shouldn't I was gonna say shouldn't, because your mind is gonna go there, right? But it's a story, so there's a protagonist and there's antagonists, right? And so his collection of stories is supposed to provoke you, right? Or to add layers to your opinion, to shape your perspective about something, as all stories do. In branding, I talk a lot about storytelling, about how you need to be in the minds of your audience and shaping your audience's mind, right? So documentaries do the same thing. It's a collection of stories, right? Meant to provide additional perspective to us. Um, the stories, right? And this is the part that I think trips people up about storytelling, right? But I'm a storyteller. Stories don't need to be true. They need to be believable, right? So when people watch documentaries and say, "Oh, that's not true. I can't believe they would do that, or they did that, or they forgot about this, or they didn't tell that part, or they're missing this." True, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, if something is omitted or not shared, that it makes it, untrue, right? Stories don't need to be true, they need to be believable. So how that story is presented. So if you ever watch the news, right, news stories where they're doing something like investigative breaking news, they might not even show somebody's face. They might be like in a shadow cast and you just see their silhouette, or like even where people are interviewed, right? So if you're like me and you go down the rabbit hole of YouTube and you watch all these crazy videos of like wild news stories, and people are like, there's a fire going on and people are standing 50 feet away from the fire describing what they seen and saw, that shapes your perspective of the story and the storyteller. Can you believe this person, right? I was an English major, so I read a lot one of the craziest books that I read was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And you're reading this book of this person telling this story, and you get halfway through the story, and you realize this person has multiple personalities. So now you don't know what to believe about what you just read, right? So stories are meant to challenge our perspective, right? It's not meant to bring some sort of ultimate truth, but it is meant to, in some ways, shape opinion, right? So when you're dealing with a court case, there are going to be stories to shape the jury's or the judge's opinion, which is exactly what happened in this case. So, the nature of documentaries is that we're presented with a lot of information and we got to decide now what we do with it, right? When you're watching a documentary of a serial killer, right? Maybe they're in jail for doing it, but now you're watching a documentary. It's like, well, I actually understand why they did that. Well, as a child, they were blah, 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 right? You have all of these different perspectives and all this information to use. But I wanted to talk about documentaries in general because, you know, as somebody who is a writer, writers, journalists are the original influencers, right? They were the people that put out the information that caused people to think and stir in all these different ways. And so that term influencer has kind of been a wash now, right? Because now anybody who's between the ages of 18 months and 80 years old can be like, oh, yeah, I'm an influencer online. But that's not necessarily the case. I watched this documentary kind of back to back with finishing the documentary Katrina Hell and High Water that is on Hulu, which you should watch. My cousin is in it. A lot of my family was impacted by Hurricane Katrina. My cousin documented his whole journey, so a lot of the footage you see in that documentary, which also they have a different one on Netflix, but I prefer the one on Hulu. Actually came from my cousin, so shout out to him. But going into documentaries, there's a way that a story is told, and I think those documentaries that I just mentioned are very well told. And this Sean Combs documentary is very well told. Now, online there have been people who are saying like, "Oh my God, 50 Cent is so petty," which is true, depending on your definition of petty, right? But also, right, I'm talking about branding. That's very on brand for 50 Cent. When 50 Cent came out as a rapper, he came out as very bold and unapologetic, which a lot of people compare to Tupac. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that comparison, um, because as you know, Tupac is the greatest. Not because I say so, but because it's true. But as somebody who has studied everything there is to study about Tupac, there's no comparison between Tupac and 50 Cent. And I'm gonna leave that there. But he was very bold and brazen in that some of his first raps were talking about and addressing the people who had shot him, right? And that he was coming out and rapping was like, I'm not afraid of anybody. I'm not scared of you. You shot me 5 times. You want to come and do it again? You can. Like, that whole song, which is one of my favorite 50 Cent songs, Many Men, right? Many men wish death upon me, right? So he's like saying, yeah, you want to shoot me, you want me dead, but you're not the only one. Like, you had your chance and you missed this, and now it's my turn, sort of thing. And people really embrace that. People have been entertained for the last 20 years between this beef between him and Ja Rule, which I'm not even sure people even know the origination of the beef. We just know that 50 Cent does not like Ja Rule, and Ja Rule runs from or stays away from conversations about 50 Cent and stays out of his way because of it. Now, we don't know if Ja Rule is at fault or 50 Cent is at fault, but like I said about storytelling, they don't need to be true. They need to be believable. And people for the last 20 years have believed 50 Cent, right? Ja Rule sucks. He's this, he's that. Whatever 50 says about Ja Rule, people are like, I believe it, because for the longest time, Ja Rule said nothing about it. And so it looked like he was um, kind of running scared. So 50 Cent comes to this documentary as an executive producer. Now, what most people don't understand about that is the executive producer of a project does very little work. They likely lend their money and their influence to get a project off the ground to make it happen. They are the ones that then pitch the project to a studio or to a Netflix to say, hey, we have this really great project, we want to sell it. And then they use their influence to kind of market and produce it, right? Tyler Perry executive produces a lot of stuff. He also writes a lot of stuff. 50 Cent is the executive producer, excuse me, of shows like Power, and all the different spin-offs from that, BMF and all those things. Doesn't mean he's writing every single line of it, but he is the executive producer. He is the one who is essentially writing the check for the whole project and making sure that it goes as planned, right? So him lending himself to this project as an executive producer automatically lends credibility to it, which is what I'm talking about today. Credibility, branding, and storytelling. Lends credibility to it. Why? Because he has executive produced plenty of other reputable, successful projects, which makes this one the case. Now, had this person, somebody's just collecting footage on Diddy, um, or, trying to tell a story and talking to victims, all these different people, they could put out their documentary, but would it have the same impact and effect, right? Also, bringing 50 Cent on the project brings money. So now he can purchase that footage. If you watch the documentary, a lot of the footage is from Diddy himself, which I'm going to get into that in a minute. So he can purchase that footage at whatever it costs. Whereas a regular journalist, like if I want to make a documentary about Diddy, I may not be able to get access to it because I don't have the money to pay the person who is holding it, right? Another thing about 50 Cent, going through him, getting shot and so on and so forth, his battle with Ja Rule, him publicly commentating on people and their downfalls, right? If something goes wrong, if somebody's dressed inappropriately, whatever, like 50 Cent is going to post it on his page and talk about it, right? Again, bold and brazen, not afraid to back down sort of thing. He's a rapper. He's a storyteller. He has a persona. 50 Cent is his persona. Curtis Jackson is the person, right? So him publicly comment commentating on things makes him a great person because he was very vocal when Diddy got arrested and when that Cassie video came out and Diddy did, you know, his apology tour, so to speak. Um, so him saying like right and wrong, even like he did this whole he had this whole run of like, hey, these people owe me money. He was publicly saying like, I need my money by Monday, and tagging these people and antagonizing these people. He had a lawsuit with the singer Tierra Marie, and she tried to sue him, and then he sued her, and she owed him $50,000. And it was very clear from court documents that she didn't have the money. He kept saying publicly like, I need my money, I want my money. And people were saying like, hey, that's wrong. You don't need the money. It's not about whether I need it, right? It's the principle. So he has this strong sense of justice, which is part of his brand, which is part of his brand. And he's bringing his brand to the project, right? His brand is selling and driving the product. I know that's why I watched it, because I'm like, oh, if 50 Cent is doing it, it's going to be good. And indeed it was. So him doing all of this, and he's not the only person to do this. Like I watched this Christian person. He has this podcast or show on YouTube called All Things Theology. He does that for preachers. Like, okay, this preacher is misquoting the Bible. This preacher is cheating on his wife and still in pulpit type of thing. So there are other people that do similar things, but 50 Cent does it best, right? It is a huge part of his brand. And so hmm, he has been for years, like even 50 Cent several years ago, around the same time Jermaine Dupri came out with this it's 14 Global 14. When everybody had a blog, if I had a blog, I was writing about hip hop. 50 Cent also came out with This Is 50. And if you go to it, it started out as like he was putting mixtape content up there, and then it became like a full on blog where it was posting news stories. So 50 Cent has always aligned himself with good storytelling, and this documentary is no different, right? I think, personal angle of this, and maybe the personal interest of 50 Cent to even get involved with this project outside of him just commenting online, is that when the Cassie video came out, right, in her lawsuit, Diddy they immediately paid, right? Whatever she was asking. And then people thought that was it. And then these additional charges came out, and all these additional lawsuits and additional victims coming forward. And so these charges got very serious, right? RICO charges, racketeering, arson, um, like attempted murder, like all these things. And then instead of those charges being dropped, like they went through with the charges, even though the prosecution didn't have, all the evidence they needed for a rock solid case, they went through with it. And although it may have seemed like um, Diddy's defense was lackluster, this is exactly what they wanted. Why? when you are acquitted of charges, you cannot be retried. So all the things about him blowing up somebody's car, if you watch the documentary, like his involvement in Tupac and Biggie's murder, he can't be tried on any of that stuff, right? Because he was acquitted of it. But in the realm of public opinion, he can still be torn down, which he's not. I'm very shocked that so many people now seem to be siding with Diddy and saying free Diddy, and like it doesn't matter. Oh, it's just prostitution. Oh, it was just this. He wasn't sex trafficking. He wasn't harming anybody. These were consenting adults, type of thing. Social media, right, shaping your perspective. But the acquittal of the charges means that these more serious things that um, people have claimed that Diddy has done, he won't face any jail time for, right? Justice would not be served through our judicial system in that sense. So the question that I think is driving the documentary is really, should Diddy be allowed to rebuild? We learned on his sentencing day that he had shows and speaking engagements booked, which leads me to believe, and we can safely conclude, he was planning on, having another rebrand and coming back kind of stronger than ever. He was plotting his next sort of wave of moguldom. And if you watch the documentary and the footage that has been acquired from Diddy himself, right? He had these videographers following him around kind of in his days leading up to arrest and kind of throughout his life. There's a lot of footage of him recording himself or somebody recording him, right? He's basically talking about, God told me to do nothing because he's planning something, and you know when this blows over, type of thing. He's plotting his comeback. So it's my belief Diddy was recording himself because he wanted to produce a documentary. Now, you will see that his lawyers have submitted a cease and desist because they're saying the footage was obtained illegally. If you also watch the documentary, you know that his contracts are a little shady and he has a problem of not paying people, right? So I would imagine that he didn't pay the videographers and they're like, okay, I'm going to sell it. So 50 Cent is really challenging this thought of like, okay, Diddy is acquitted, but I still believe he did all of these things. And a lot of people still believe because we have over 100 people who have filed cases against him saying that he has done these things. Should he be allowed to just come back and, recreate and reinvent himself? And while I have been all in favor of reinvention, that is part of my brand. Um, a lot of people don't, right? Can R. Kelly come back and reinvent himself? Right? And other people who have done really terrible crimes, do they get the opportunity to reinvent themselves? All that being said, Diddy has done this over and over and over again, right? Going from being called Puff to Puff Daddy to Puffy, P. Diddy, Love, all of these things, right? That he wants to be called. Every juncture of his life, he reinvents himself into something else. He started off as an intern, wanted to be an A&R, went from A&R to video director, right? To A&R slash artist manager. Then at some point, he decided he didn't just want to be dancing in the videos. He wanted to be the artist. Reinvented himself into rapper. Never wrote any of his raps, right? Got all of these people. I have a friend who was a ghostwriter for Diddy, right? Got all these people to write for him because he wanted to then be a rapper, right? And then that wasn't enough. He joined making the band. I want to create these things. I want to executive produce. I want to do movies. I want to do tours. Oh, I want to be a business person. I'm going to have an alcohol brand and I'm going to have a restaurant and all of these things, right? Constantly reinventing himself and changing his name to mark these sort of reinventions. And so the other layer question is not only should he be given the opportunity to rebuild, can he do it? This person who has successfully reinvented himself over and over again, can he do it? Can the brand survive the allegations and the fallout? And I think 50 Cent joined this documentary project to say, absolutely not. Hell no, he should not be allowed to rebuild, and no, his brand cannot survive. Because what I'm going to help the documentary people show is that this is not a one-time occurrence. the brand that he's showing you is not his authentic brand. It's actually this, and it has been building over time. He does a really great job going all the way back to uh, his childhood and his mother and abuse, starting with his mother in both directions. The mother abusing Diddy and Diddy abusing the mother, and the manipulation, right? He was Mr. Steal Your Girl, right? The manipulation of women, how he would take these women and groom them and then essentially tear them down and break them, right? 50 Cent is saying, you know, it's not about him as a business owner. It's not about the law. It's about him as a person. And I want people to know that Sean Combs is a terrible person. That's his brand, right? Even calling the documentary Sean Combs, not P. Diddy, right? Not Diddy Do It, not any of those nicknames or aliases. Calling him out by his name, a name that he hasn't gone by, right? A name that he hasn't gone by in very many years, which is to say that this documentary is examining the person and not his personas. I don't want you to focus on Diddy, who was making the music and, making you dance in the club. I don't want you to focus on the businessman. I want you to focus on the heart of the person. That's what we are examining. This is not a good person. And this bad person should not be able to just serve their time and come back out and continue to profit when they have done so many people wrong, when they have plotted to kill people, when they have stolen money from people, where they have fired people, where they have raped, manipulated, lied on people. They should not be able to do this. And all of that is shown in the documentary. 4 parts. So 4 hours. 4 parts, 4 hours. You should watch it. But, this sort of documentary or culmination of the wrecking of Diddy's brand is, I think, a continuation of what Diddy has already done to himself. The reason why Diddy had to invent himself so many times is because he actually damaged his brand, right? So going from being that intern at A&R to starting Bad Boy, um, his main artist, Notorious B.I.G., died. He had to start over with new artists. Those artists was disgruntled because they weren't getting paid properly. So he had to go the making the band route, right? He went out and found these artists and signed them. And then their contracts were so messed, they weren't making money. They weren't getting paid. He signed them to these 10 album contracts, and they couldn't produce the music and have the album. So now he's like, okay, they don't want to work for me and I can't keep working with them. Let me work with MTV to do this contest. Sean Combs was so powerful. He didn't just stay in music. He went to business. I mean, I was in college running around telling people vote or die. Do y'all remember that when he was doing that campaign? Do y'all remember when Diddy ran the city, the New York Marathon? He got a key to this, like, it was a big thing. This is a person who was actually larger than life, and over time, he made you forget about, his indiscretions and his all these other things, right? That, he was cheating on his partners who were the loves of his life, that he had this gun charge, that, he threw a party in Harlem and several people got shot and killed and he was responsible for it, that he went to his son's college and beat up the coach because his son wasn't getting significant playing time. All of these things you forget about because then he comes back out with something else. Then he's like, let's vote for Barack Obama. Let's do this. Oh, now my name is Love and I'm doing this, right? And he's putting out good music. He did the Bad Boy reunion tour where he was able to get all these artists who um, had strong cases of not being paid by him. They did not have access to their royalties. He convinced them to come back and do this tour so that they could get some money and get paid, but the tour was really all about him, right? Classic kind of narcissist thing. Um, there's this clip in the documentary where he was a keynote speaker panelist at the Earn Your Leisure Invest Fest. And he talks about controlling the narrative, right? And so his sense of storytelling is to get ahead of what people are saying. So he has set up this dichotomy, this relationship between, I'm just a business owner. I have always tried to help people and put people on and make sure that people are paid. And it's not me, right? they're irresponsible with their money. It's not me. I moved on and now they're upset. It's not me, right? All right. It's not me. It's them. And people have bought into that. Sean Combs is very charismatic. There are two of the ex-jurors from his trial that are there, and one of them, a black woman, talks about being a millennial and growing up, being influenced by music that has come out of Bad Boy and that he, excuse me, has helped produce. And then she talks about, when the judge reprimanded him in the court for staring at the judges, right? You're not supposed to make eye contact. Why? Because that's influence. And so she says, like, no, like we had kind of the same reactions, right? He was really using the skills that he has, which is connection, right? Connecting to people. He's like, no, I think he was making faces because we thought similar, we thought the same things, right? They're influenced by him. As much as people hate rich people and people say, oh, there shouldn't be any billionaires, subconsciously, a lot of people want to switch places, right? Oh my God, I hate Diddy. I can't believe he did that. But it's like, oh my God, look at all these wonderful and amazing things that he accomplished, right? He got an honorary doctorate from the college that he dropped out from, Lifetime Achievement Awards, star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, multiple Grammys, millions and millions of dollars, a house in Miami, house in LA, condo in New York, like all these things. People are like, he's such a terrible person. I could be terrible. Pick me, right? That's what people are saying. But, you know, the documentary, you can watch it and, think whatever you want to think. I think it does a good job. I think it follows through on its premise that I'm going to really show you the person who Sean Combs actually is. This is the reckoning. This is what happens when you go through years and years and years of abusing people, manipulating people, and being so greedy that you're willing to do whatever it takes to reach, you know, your definition of success. But the ultimate thing is, these are brands, right? These are brands that we're talking about. And brands are known for three things, like three core branding principles, right? Identity, who you are, right? Who you are, who you present yourself to be. And exactly what this documentary is saying, Sean Combs is not who he presented himself to be. We were all sold a lie. Now, people will say, like, oh, you can't fake authenticity. You absolutely can. You absolutely can, right? So the core branding principles, identity, the promise. Sean Combs promised us Black excellence, and then he showed it to us, right? The third brand principle is experience. He showed it to us. And this Ciroc lifestyle, right? The party was never ending. Who doesn't want to live a carefree life and party all the time? Whatever your sense of party is. Maybe party for you is being on a yacht in Miami. He showed us that. Maybe partying for you is being in a club every night. He showed us that. Maybe partying for you is, having the choice of whatever men or women you want to be with and sleep with. He showed us that. Right? Having the money to make decisions, having a family, right? He showed us all of these things. And so we look at modern day influencers, that's what they do. They're showing us the experience. These influencers are taking trips out of the country. They're waking up in a king size bed, eating expensive food, drinking expensive drinks. Um, God, I mean, let's overlook the fact that they might be living with their parents or they, might not be making income from this, but they show us the experience, right? So Diddy really was able to, in my lifetime, in my experience of seeing Diddy, be able to follow through identity, promise, and experience, right? And um, and then with 50 Cent, and the creators of this documentary are able to do is debunk that, show us where the manipulation happened, show us how it went wrong, um, and that sort of thing. But Diddy knew about having a strong brand was to be clear. He was very clear about what he was here to do. He was very clear that he wanted to be a billionaire, very clear that, even in naming the company Bad Boy, right, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And then he was consistent, right? That line that Suge Knight has where he's like, oh, Diddy is all up in the videos, all up in the thing. He's like, yes, because Diddy understood that to build a brand, I need to be in front of people constantly. they need to see me. When they see my artist, they need to think of me. When they see Bad Boy, they need to know that I'm in charge. When they hear music, when they think about going to the club, they need to think Ciroc, right? I need to be in front of people all the time. Everywhere you went, when I don't even know what year, 2010, like 2010 to 2015, anytime you saw Diddy or anything associated with Diddy, you saw Ciroc battle. In the early versus battles that were happening online, right? Diddy sponsored a couple, and Ciroc was there, and they made sure to announce Ciroc and Ciroc. I don't drink. I've never drank it, but I could trace the logo for you because I have seen it so many times. Consistency builds brands, clarity builds brands, and connection, right? The connection is what builds the brand, and that's what Diddy had. And if you notice, if you have seen him throughout the years, right? He has always worn sunglasses, right? I'm going back to what I said about him saying the most important part of brand building is controlling the narrative. This is how he controls his connection as well. There's I want to say it's the Ellen DeGeneres show where he's talking to her and he says, "Hang on, let me take off my sunglasses," right? This is now manipulating you into thinking that now I'm being more authentic and revealing. Because I've been wearing my sunglasses looking cool because that's my persona. And now I'm taking off the sunglasses and I'm showing you the real me, right? And getting in the camera. If you watch his apology video after the Cassie video came out, right? No sunglasses, but he's manipulating his hand and his face, like trying to show himself as distraught. That's part of the branding, right? Even thinking about sunglasses like the singer Her when she came out. She wore sunglasses all the time, right? To be more mysterious. Um, Manipulating visibility and appearance is a large part of branding. Thinking about artists like Janelle Monáe. Her first several years in the music industry, she only wore black or white. Only wore black or white. Only had this pompadour hairstyle. Did not straighten her hair. Did not have braids, twist, nothing. Just these puffs, right? Visual identity is so important. And I think a lot of people are having a hard time digesting this new documentary because it is altering your perception of how you have viewed this person year over year. You saw, again, the promise is Black excellence. You saw this. He showed it and demonstrated it. And now seeing him in a different light, even though there wasn't any like live video, or flash photography in the courtroom, even seeing those images of him with gray hair, right? Without having, he's living, Diddy has lived this life of luxury where, I was watching something, he was getting like a gold facial, right? And seeing him now where, the drawn images of him in the courtroom is showing gray hair, it's showing maybe wrinkles, it's showing him not well dressed, right? There's no Versace, there's no gold chains, there's no this or that, right? Is him really pared down. And I think people struggle with seeing that because it's different. Right, it challenges the other image that you are holding on so tightly, right, into your mind of that this is an amazing person. This person was all throughout my childhood. They made great music. They did these wonderful things, right? He started a school in Harlem, right? He did all of these things, but now, what if I told you that wasn't true or that wasn't the full truth? And I have credible people to show you. I talk a lot about too when I talk about branding. I talk about brands either build or they borrow, right? And if you're a strong brand, you're doing a combination of both. So again, the documentary borrows 50 Cent's brand of speaking towards justice, of influence, of storytelling. It borrows from the people in the documentary as well, right? Eric Sermon, right? If you know who Eric Sermon is, you know that this is a very low-key guy, right? In the music industry, never on the blogs, never on TMZ, who now shows up in this documentary to say, has been my experience of this person. That makes you think differently, right? Than seeing Aubrey O'Day, who people have already written off as like, oh, she's clout chasing, or she's a liar, or she just wants to be a reality star, right? It's that juxtaposition. They're introducing new people, right? Which is shaping your perspective. Even if you have watched, like I have, every news story documentary about Tupac's murder and Biggie's murder. Now we're learning new details, right? I didn't know that Biggie had a flight to London that day and Diddy canceled it. I didn't know that Diddy paid all these people to come from New York to be in LA on that day. I didn't know, right? That you know, all of these different things, right? So it's adding layers to my understanding, or what I thought was my understanding, my solid understanding of these events, right? Um Watching his interaction with his sons, or how he came to know the mothers of his children, right? All of these things are adding layers to the brand. And so, like, people are going to be examining, both 50 Cent for producing this documentary and Diddy as a result of the documentary about him. People are doing the same thing with you and your brand, right? I talked about identity, promise, and experience. That's very important, especially for new people who are coming to know you. Who are you, and how do they come to find out who you are? What is your promise? What are you delivering to people? What can people expect from you, right? What experience are you showing them? I say this a lot with entrepreneurs. So this to my friend who has been probably since August, September, right? Trying to get some sales. She's like, hey, I'm selling these things and my business might be closing as a result of it. And these things are happening. And I said to um, her that, what if Staples every day you got online, right? Staples was like, hey, oh my gosh, we haven't gotten any customers today. This really sucks, right? We won't be able to survive if we don't get customers. We're having a 30% off sale and you guys aren't buying. If we were Walmart, you would be buying, right? What if Staples did that? That sounds crazy, right? But you have to think of yourself as an actual brand. If you decide to start a business and people aren't buying, then that means that you need to do something different in order to get them to, right? You have to listen to your audience. So a lot of people are showing up online and say, hey, I'm a writer, I'm a painter, I'm a musician, and I want people to hear my music. And then you go online to complain about people not supporting, people not reposting, people not doing XYZ. As a potential customer, client, audience member, supporter, what is then my experience of you and your brand? If every day I come online, instead of seeing your art, instead of seeing your product or service, I see you complaining. I see you posting memes. I see you bashing customers. And I see this a lot with like hairstylists and photographers. My client is 15 minutes late and blah, blah, blah. And I think, oh my God forbid I hit traffic and I have to be late. Now I'm going to be online being bashed. Or personal trainers. And like, oh, my client is not squatting deep enough. Dang, I'm paying you to tell me that in private, not for you to post it online, right? What has been your experience? People have a hard time letting go of these artists, right? Like Michael Jackson. Was he a child molester or not? I don't know, right? People are like, I don't want to get into that because I had such a good experience listening to his music, learning how to do the moonwalk, singing the Christmas carols. I had such a good experience with this person. I'm not even going to entertain the other things. You might have businesses like that. Yeah, like people. There's so many bad reviews on Yelp, but every time I go, I love it. Right? A bad experience. So, as you're thinking about building your brand, and again, you can watch this documentary or not. I would encourage it. Watch it for fun, watch it to study, which is what I did. But take away from it that, you know, building a brand is difficult. Tearing down a brand is even more difficult when people have done wrong. But to really think about the question of how are you showing up if you are building a brand online, and then what are the things that you can produce, what things you can do to protect your brand, to bring clarity, consistency, and connection to your audience so that you have a strong brand moving forward. Okay. If you are a subscriber of mine, this will be available to you. The replay will be available to you. If you're not a subscriber, you should subscribe so that you can come back and take a look at this. But thank you for tuning in, y'all. Those are my thoughts. I would love to know yours. Feel free to comment below.